This is your Wednesday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Hope you're having a good one out there in spite of the weather. So someday spring will truly arrive and we'll be happy, but right now, not looking great. Outside, inside, you're probably listening to this podcast right now. Certainly are if you are hearing what I'm saying right now. And you should be comfortable. You should be in a good place and getting ready for 30 minutes of quality sports talk and entertainment. Got to talk Timberwolves today. Blew an opportunity to get closer in the playoff play-in race with a disappointing loss to Washington on Tuesday night. The Wild also lost to Nashville. That becoming a little bit of a concern. That team, a tough matchup for the Wild, and it could possibly be a playoff opponent if things break a certain way, so watch out for that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Get into some Gophers hockey talk. Frozen Four begins tomorrow in Boston. Gophers versus Minnesota State-Mankato in the national semifinals. Randy Johnson will help me break that all down. Tiger Woods for sure playing in the Masters, or at least that is the plan as of right now. Sure seems like that is going to be the case when things get teed off on Thursday. And get into some transfer portal talk from a listener question here as well. But first, what did I miss? Like I said at the jump, we're going to talk Timberwolves. Lost on Tuesday at home to the Washington Wizards. Final score in that one, 132 to 114. Washington, not an awful team, 35-44. So, it's not like one of those teams at the end that's just tanking and trying to, play out the string and get a high draft pick. But, still a team that you're better than. They did not have Bradley Beal. You'd like to think you can get that game, especially when you are competing for that 6th seed still. And, you can say, well, it was a long shot. And it was, but it hurts even more because Denver did lose to San Antonio on Tuesday. If the Wolves had won this one, they would have pulled within one game with 2 to play, and they still have that tiebreaker. That would have felt like it was in reach. That feels like then if you win your last 2, all you have to have is Denver go 1-1, and you've got that 6th seed. Now you've got to have those last 2 games as wins and Denver's last 2 as losses, a much taller task. So that hurts from that perspective when the Wolves had so much to play for in this game. And defense, the culprit, again, 132 points for Washington. And the Wolves have been giving up a lot of points lately. Throughout the season, I think defense has been, by and large, a pleasant surprise. There's been some slippage post-All-Star break, but particularly lately, defensive rating in their last 11 games, just 23rd in the league, 118.4. That's the number of points you allow per 100 possessions. 118.7. Now, they've gotten away with it because they've been shooting the ball well. The offense has been clicking. They are still 6-5 in those last 11 games, but you can't go into this stretch run playing defense like that. It just isn't going to work. You've got to get that defensive identity back. You got to get that level of competition back, and we just did not see that on Tuesday, and that was the most disappointing part to anybody who watched that game. The fans booed the Wolves, and rightfully so. Expectations have been raised for this team. Fans know it's at stake. It's a big crowd. It's a vocal crowd. They are going to show their displeasure with a poor effort. Chris Finch, head coach of the Timberwolves, talked about that effort, talked about that level of competition, talked about the defense in his post-game comments. Let's take a listen to that right now.
We just got flat out competed. It doesn't matter if you were long or short or whatever. We just got out-competed. They played harder, which is disappointing given everything that we have to play for. We didn't play with any presence, any physicality at the rim. We didn't really guard them, and it was evident from the very beginning. And when you get into one of those games, all you got to do is hit one cold streak, which we did at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and it's over.
And again, not the end of the world, right? The most likely outcome in this still was going to be that the Wolves are going to wind up as the 7th seed. 6 is still technically within reach, but I'd rather almost see them at this point now, fine-tune some things, maybe rest some guys like they're doing a little bit with Patrick Beverley, work Jaden McDaniels back into the mix. He was back in the lineup on Tuesday. Get everything geared towards what's likely going to be that play-in game next Tuesday or Wednesday against the Clippers. Got to figure out how to beat that team, how to get that 7 seed, how to get that matchup against Memphis in the first round. That could be, favorable is the wrong word, but better than, trying to scramble and win and get that 8 seed and then play Phoenix, which would be a kind of a no chance first round playoff opponent. So Wolves need to regroup more than they need to do anything here, as opposed to just pressing and going for that 6 seed. So we will see how that plays out. 2 more home games, of course. You got Thursday against San Antonio, which clinched a playoff spot. A play-in spot on Tuesday night with a win. Lakers are out, by the way, and Wolves play then Sunday in the finale against the Bulls. That game might not have a whole lot of meaning for the Wolves if things don't break a certain way with them and Denver in that next game. So we'll see about that. But really, this last 2 games has to be about fine-tuning, making sure they're healthy, and gearing up for that play-in likelihood next week.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
The Wild did not fare any better on Tuesday. Lost 6-2 against Nashville, a game with a lot of penalties, a lot of fights, and a familiar ending. The Wild has lost 3 times now this season, all lopsided losses to Nashville. And now that's concerning in a number of fronts. One, you don't want to ever be dominated by an opponent, even if that opponent is below you in the standings. You don't want that. And the second of all, Nashville is 4th in the division right now, 4 points behind the Blues, 7 points behind the Wild. But if Nashville happens to catch St. Louis, that would likely be the Wild's opponent in the first round, assuming the Wild winds up as the 2nd seed and Nashville winds up as the 3rd seed. So having a team where you've struggled against them, even if there are extenuating circumstances, I've talked about this before. Kaapo Kähkönen started those first 2 games that were lopsided final scores against Nashville this season. But then you had in this one you had Marc-Andre Fleury playing this one, so no excuses in that regard. So if that ends up being the matchup, that's troublesome. And the Wild do get one more chance against Nashville, April 24th. It'd be nice to see if they could secure a win in that game, get a little bit more confidence, especially if that winds up being their playoff opponent. Just 13 regular season games left. Wild still in very good shape, 91 points, overall record of 43, 21, and 5. Kirill Kaprizov had his 40th goal in this game. Seems like he is on a very good pace to break that single-season goal record shared by Marian Gaborik and Eric Stahl at 42. All he needs is 2 in his final 13 games to tie it, 3 to pass it. And the pace he's been on lately, he will pass that in the next 5 or 6 games because he has been on fire. But in this game, the Wild just had no answer for Roman Josi. He's been great against them all season. That Nashville's defenseman, that a great offensive game, a great two-way game. Just a struggle against this team. Some teams are like that. You just have a hard time matching up against certain teams, certain personnel, the way they play, the style of play. It's a tough thing to explain sometimes because overall the Wild is a better team than Nashville. But, matchups will dictate things in the playoffs, and if the Wild ends up playing Nashville, they're going to have to figure that out. I'm going to bring in Randy Johnson here, Gophers hockey writer for the Star Tribune, college hockey writer. Just a programming note, not our program, but the college hockey semifinals Thursday. If you are trying to watch them, Denver, Michigan at 4 p.m. is on ESPNU. But the Gophers against Minnesota State-Mankato at 7:30 is on ESPNU because baseball has taken over those other channels with the opening night. When this was all planned out, baseball wasn't going to have a special night because opening day should have been a week ago. But now because of the lockout and the late start to the season, this is where we're at. So ESPNU, you're going to need to make sure you have ESPNU to be able to watch that Gophers-Mavericks game at 7:30 on Thursday. If the Gophers, or if you're a Mavericks fan, whoever you want to watch in that championship game, 7 p.m. on Saturday, that will be on ESPNU, a much more readily available channel. So that is your programming note, your reminder for trying to watch that game. Happy to have Randy Johnson on Daily Delivery today. Randy does a great job covering a lot of different stuff for the Star Tribune, but he is out at the Frozen Four as we speak, getting ready for news conferences on Wednesday and then the actual games themselves, the Frozen Four semifinals on Thursday. Randy, obviously the big one of local interest is the semifinal between the Gophers and Minnesota State-Mankato. As you think about that game, I mean, first of all, you're there already. Not much has happened yet, but it's got to be a pretty good. It's going to probably be a pretty good college hockey vibe, I would imagine, with some of these teams traveling and being able to get out there and get those fan bases out there eventually.
Yeah, it certainly will. It was interesting on the flight today, Tuesday morning here, the flight to Boston. A lot of Gopher fans on there, some Minnesota State fans too, and the CCHA Commissioner Don Lucio happened to be on the flight too. So there was a lot of hockey talk going on. While people were waiting for their seats.
I bet there was, and a lot of that talk, locally, like I said, is about that semifinal between the Gophers and Minnesota State-Mankato. It's a rematch of last year's region final. Mankato won 4-0 in getting to the Frozen Four for the very first time, and now they're back for a second time. This is a hard. I wouldn't necessarily say it's stylistically. This is not necessarily a hard game to predict. I think we know the strengths and weaknesses of both of these teams by now, but as you think matchup wise, as you think about what happened last year versus what might happen this year, from your perspective, what has changed the most for the Gophers between last year's region final loss and this opportunity to get to the title game?
I think they're more prepared to play in a playoff type atmosphere this year. They're a little grittier. They have a very solid top line of Ben Myers centering Matthew Nyes and Aaron Hugland. So and that line's been on fire lately. It was very impressive in the regional with Hugland setting up Myers for the winning goal against UMass in overtime, and then Nyes scoring their first goal, Hugland the second in the 3-0 victory over Western Michigan in the regional final. So that the goaltending's been great with Justin Close taking over early January after Jack LaFontaine left for the Carolina Hurricanes. I just think this Gophers team is a bit better prepared this year for the NCAA tournament situation.
And that was for years. That was a knock on this program, that they weren't gritty enough, that they didn't have kind of those players that could get it done in those kind of down low situations, going to getting scoring those tough goals. That has certainly changed this year, and that's been one of the most impressive things to me about this iteration of Bob Motzko's Gophers.
Yeah, I think he's been looking to do that all along, and it's come basically over the last 3 years they've finished pretty much on a high note. It's just 2020 COVID shuts everything down. Last year, they couldn't get past Mankato. Mankato was, a very good team last year, and is again this year, maybe even better. 37-5. That's nothing to sneeze at there. So yeah, I think it's going to be a similar matchup to what the Gophers face against UMass. A very structured team, and this Mankato team probably has more skill than it had last year, even.
So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about Mankato. They're, for so long this is a program that's been thought of as, third or fourth even in this state. You talk about the Gophers, you talk about Minnesota Duluth winning so many championships lately, even St. Cloud making strides. That is not the case anymore. They've been up at or near, the top of the polls, the top of, the college hockey for the last few years. How have they made themselves into this sort of program, and how can they then translate that into their first national title?
Basically, they've done it. Mike Hastings done a wonderful job down there. He's built the team. They're going to be a little bit older than most. He'll have some 24, 25, and even 26-year-olds on there. He gets guys that fit his style. Playing some lockdown hockey, but still with a good amount of skill. And then, obviously you have an outstanding goalie in Dryden McKay, who's, he's up for the for the Mike Richter Award for the third straight year. And he's now a Hobie Baker hat trick finalist, along with Ben Meyer of the Gophers and Bobby Brink of Denver.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that, because I was going to ask you about that. I mean, the connections in that finalist group, a lot of Minnesota guys. Is there a favorite in your mind going into that announcement, which will be Friday?
That's a good question. I'm not sure there is a favorite. I think it'll probably be a pretty tight vote. You look at Dryden McKay, and he's the NCAA career shutout leader. He set the single season wins mark for the NCAA this year. He's basically he's been there so long. I think he's garnered a lot of credit in that. Ben Myers has just been a warrior down the stretch for the Gophers. He came back from the Olympics and has pretty much taken the team on his back. Bobby Brink, Minnetonka kid for Denver, leads the nation in scoring, 14 goals and 42 assists. So yeah, there's three pretty high-end players that are up for that award.
Now, obviously, this is not just the Minnesota versus Minnesota State show. The other half of the bracket, awfully good. I mean, this is 3 number ones, and the Gophers are the only number 2 seed that are here. And you got Michigan and Denver. How do you figure that other semifinal goes?
I'm curious to see how that one plays out, just because both these teams are high scoring. Denver, I think, had 7 or 8 guys with 30 points or more this year. Michigan has 7 first-round NHL draft picks on their roster, including 4 of the top 5 from the 2021 draft. And they both like to play up and down quite a bit. But Denver, in beating Minnesota Duluth in the regional final out in Loveland, Colorado, last couple weeks ago, was basically was able to play a shutdown game, and it'll be interesting if they do that against Michigan.
Yeah, it will, and it's it'd be an interesting stylistic matchup, I would imagine, either way in the final, which is Saturday. The semifinals are Thursday. Gophers here. If we can kind of shift back to them for a minute. I mean, it's been such an evolution for this program. I mean, you and I followed them for quite some time, and you had the Doug Woog era where they couldn't quite get over the hump and kind of build on those championships that Herb Brooks won in the 70s, and then Don Lucia comes in and wins those 2 pretty soon after that, and they've been trying to get back to that level for a while, and they haven't won a national championship since 2003. That's 19 years for this program. That is a very long time to go. It's about the same, even longer, I guess, than the drought that they'd endured, or not quite that long, but
no, not quite, but yeah, but
almost there.
It's a long one, and they're frozen. The Frozen Four drought that they ended was basically was tied for the second longest that they had. So it's a situation where they needed to figure things out, and I think they have. I definitely Bob Motzko's got this program pointed in the right direction. And the one thing too is college hockey. There's a lot more parity. You look at there's just more teams that are putting together teams that can win, and I think a lot of that might have to do with you're getting older players. Everybody's going with guys who play a year or 2 in the USHL or the NAHL. It's just not guys coming straight out of high school anymore.
Absolutely. A couple more things for you, Randy. If as you think about this matchup, Gophers versus the Mavericks, do you have a prediction yet, or do you have a sense of which way you think this will go?
I haven't really sat down and looked at a prediction yet per se. I'm just it's whichever team can force its style on the other one and is comfortable maybe not playing in its usual style. The Gophers showed that against UMass. They got down 2 goals a couple times right away in the first period, down 2-0. But they were able to persevere. So I think that bodes well for them. But Mankato, they know how to win. 37 wins and 5 losses this year. They've done it against good teams. They swept Minnesota Duluth. They played Michigan in the icebreaker tournament way back in October, lost 3-2 in the championship game. So they're right there with the best teams in the country, if not the best.
Absolutely. A final thing for you, Randy, is if they are able to get past Mankato, I'm talking about the Gophers here, and manage to win Saturday night, what's the level of how crazy you think it's going to get? Just in terms of a fan base that's been waiting 19 years for this.
Oh yeah, that's. I mean, you saw what showed up at for the Big Ten championship game against Michigan. They had the largest crowd ever at Mariucci. So I think people are waiting for this to happen if it can. I've sensed a pretty big level of excitement around this program. Especially in the second half of this season. It's it won't be if they would win it. It won't be like 0-2 when they're at home. But there's a celebration waiting to happen if they could come through.
Absolutely. Well, you will be there to cover it. Follow Randy Johnson's work, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. Randy, thanks so much. We'll be checking in with you from out there as well.
Okay, sounds good, Mike. Appreciate it.
Interesting stuff from Randy Johnson. As always, like I said, he is on the scene in Boston. You will want to follow his coverage. Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. Should be a really good game. I think Gophers are playing really well. I think Minnesota State is a very good team that's also playing very well. I mean, they've only lost 5 times all season long. Imagine this will be a tight game. I feel like it's got kind of that feel of a 3-2 kind of affair, back and forth, nobody really pulling away, but I am ready to be proven wrong too, because who knows how these things unfold when they actually happen. Gophers, we will see quite an accomplishment to get this far this season, given everything that's been thrown their way. If they could win a national title this season, that would be quite a story. And like Randy said, a lot of people would be ready to celebrate. Let's move on to talk a little golf. Tiger Woods made it official, or at least as official as it can get right now. Played a practice round, said he felt good. Had a news conference on Tuesday talking about how he thinks he's ready to play. He's going to play the Masters a little more than a year after that gruesome car accident that almost caused him to have his leg amputated. Can Tiger Woods win this thing? Well, all logic says no, right? He's rusty. He's older. He's at an age when guys don't usually win majors anymore. I mean, he's in his mid-40s now. He's coming off a major injury where he still is affected somewhat physically by it. So all logic dictates that there's no way in the world that Tiger Woods should even be able to compete in this tournament. But athletes like this, personalities like this, outsized egos like you have to be as great as Tiger Woods is, you never count those people out. You never say this person can't win this tournament. You never say this person can't do a certain thing, because they are always capable of kind of finding whatever it is that makes them great and channeling it, even if it's just for a few days, like a golf tournament. So it is compelling. It makes the Masters infinitely more interesting, even though the Masters is always going to be interesting anyway. I'll be watching more. I want to see what happens. I know there's probably 30 or 40 other golfers in the field that have a logically better chance of winning this tournament than Tiger Woods. I don't care. My eyes are going to be on Tiger Woods. That's just the way sports work. Your eyes are attracted to the compelling story, and Tiger Woods is the compelling story in this case. How will he fare? Maybe it's just a 2-day story. He misses the cut. Life goes on, and then we really pay attention to the guys that we probably should be paying attention to from the jump. But maybe, just maybe, Tiger finds his way into at least some semblance of contention. We see what used to be, what could be, as he enters this kind of next phase of his career. I don't know. All I know is this: it's going to be really interesting to watch. It's going to be really exciting and fun to watch, way more so than if Tiger was not involved at all. Let's get to an email from listener Chuck, who says, "Hi, Mr. Rand. I really enjoy your podcast and the guests you have on. Give a lot of information on sports in the Twin Cities. Thank you, Chuck. I'm wondering if you have talked much about the NCAA portal that seems to have athletes leaving the U of M in droves. I have, but I'm happy to talk about it some more here. Maybe because the women's Final Four was in town, I was just more in tune with women's basketball, but it seems that the U's women's basketball team is down to 3 players. That is accurate. All the starters have left. That is more or less accurate as well. You might have talked about that issue already, but I would like to know more of why the students leave, and are they getting a better experience at other places? Is something going on at the U? Thanks, and keep up the great work. The transfer portal, we've talked about it on the show from time to time. It's fundamentally changed college athletics. Students being able to change schools without losing a year of eligibility, without having to go into a major process, is fundamentally changing things. And some would argue for the better. I think the empowerment piece of this for athletes is 100% a good thing, but there's also no denying the impact it is having on teams. And the Gophers, both the men's and the women, seem to be experiencing a lot of this when it comes to basketball. You had the men's team a year ago when Richard Pitino left. When he was let go, you had Ben Johnson come in. A lot of players left via the portal. The players they brought in were not quite the same caliber. Gophers finished last place. Now that's kind of one of the more common examples of how the portal works, right? The coach leaves, all the players who were recruited by that coach leave, and then you got to kind of start over. So you can't begrudge a player for wanting a new experience, especially if the coach who brought them in isn't there anymore. Now the Gophers women is a different story because Lindsay Whalen is still the head coach. And I think this is just a case of they haven't experienced the success they thought they would have or wanted to have under Lindsay Whalen. So now you're seeing a lot of these high-profile players leave. The biggest one being Sarah Scalia, probably the most surprising one. Sarah Scalia entering the portal. That was announced last week. But a lot of other teams leaving, or a lot of other players leaving the Gophers as well. Some of them probably would not have played much, but certainly Sarah Scalia and some of her other teammates, Caddy Sissoko, would have certainly had an impact on the 2022-23 Gophers when they have a lot of those incoming freshmen coming in that we've talked about that could impact this program for years to come. Now, is this disproportionately going to affect the Gophers going forward, or is this just a one-off where both of these programs, the men and the women, have had the circumstances that make it ripe for the portal? I don't know. That's going to be interesting to watch going forward. You would think that a school that, is a Big Ten school that has, a lot of the facilities, a lot of the, cachet that you want to have in terms of attracting high-profile athletes and being able to keep them, you would like to think that that's not going to be the case going forward, that they will be able to benefit as much from the portal, if not more, than they lose from the portal. But right now, Chuck, you're absolutely right. This does seem to be impacting the Gophers quite a bit. It's going to make this a very tricky offseason for Lindsay Whalen as she tries to navigate putting together a roster, adding some veteran, older players around some of these very good younger players that are supposed to be coming in. And watch it for the future, because if these younger players aren't happy with the experience and end up leaving, that is going to be a very dicey proposition for Lindsay Whalen going forward. Let's finish quickly with the cooler. This just happened as I was recording on Wednesday morning. Twins officially announcing that the opener has been postponed from Thursday to Friday. First pitch, 3:10. Forecast Friday looks slightly better than Thursday, at least drier than Thursday. Just an awful run of weather here, but it looks like the weather over the weekend gets a lot better Saturday and Sunday, so maybe get outside, get some Twins baseball, stay dry, and see this thing get underway. But if you're planning on taking the day off Thursday or something like that, no longer the case. It is a Friday 3:10 start, Target Field against the Mariners. That will do it for today. There'll be a lot more Twins talk tomorrow with Phil Miller, and we'll see you then.